Hello, friends. Welcome back to Called to Homeschool with your host, Meg Thomas. I am a homeschool coach, mother of seven, homeschooled all my babies. We're in our 18th year. I have five homeschool graduates, and I love helping people be able to homeschool long term. A lot of times that's with helping with the family relationships so that homeschool gets to just be fun. And as many of you know, I have been answering questions here on the podcast and actually bringing people on sometimes and answering their questions. And so today we have Jessica on the podcast. Jessica, I think your microphone accidentally got muted. If you want to hurry and unmute that, there you go. So Jessica's on the podcast today. So Jessica, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll start diving into your question.
Great. So a little bit about myself. I am a mom of four littles. I live in South Florida, and you might hear a couple of them in the background. Their ages 8 to 2, and I have a fifth one on the way right now. I started homeschooling my journey back when we were living in Texas. We kind of did our oldest, her birthday was like before the cutoff timeline, and so young. She's like younger on her grade, and so she was doing a Montessori school while I was still working, and we decided to put her in public school for kindergarten, and she was just 4 turning 5, and it was just a lot. She was very tired. It was a full day, and that's kind of where I begun to realize that maybe we wanted to do things a little bit differently, because she also was always had a love for reading, and I noticed a little bit in there that she started really not loving reading as much anymore, and had a couple of things pop up. And so that's when we began. I homeschooled that year. I stayed home and decided to stop working and homeschooled her for kindergarten. And then we kind of did a lot of like a little bit on and off here and there. And then we moved and decided to put her back in school, but not my younger son, who was in kinder at the time. And then now we're homeschooling all of them. So that's kind of where we're at. But
That
yeah,
is so fun.
yeah. And I have a background in business. That's kind of where my,
Where you were working.
yeah, work background. So
Okay, that is so fun. I love hearing everybody's journey and story because they're all such different places. And like, it's interesting. A lot of people, kindergarten has been an issue because when it's just a couple hour kindergarten, people are like, oh, it's kind of fun still and it kind of good. But they're really pushing this full day kindergarten, and it is wearing a lot of little kids out to just be sitting. That's hard. That'd be hard for me. My brain did not work well with the public school model. So I totally get that. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and just read your question, and then we can just kind of dive in. Does that work for you?
yes, thanks.
Perfect. So Jessica asks, how do you regain motivation after getting burned out from homeschooling and being a positive parent? I'm about to have my fifth kiddo. When are you due, by the way?
October, so mid-October.
Ooh,
Yes.
fun. I'm an October birthday. Great month to have a baby. I love homeschooling, but all the planning ends up on me, and I feel like I'm running on empty all the time with barely any energy to actually implement any plans or something to even plan anything. Also, kids seem to be super bored all the time. Okay, I love this question because I think it is a very relevant question. Is that the right word? To a lot of people. So let's talk first about why are you feeling burned out? What's going on?
I think mainly it's the difference in ages and their needs changing as the olders are getting a little bit more into they are more independent, but some of their lesson work does take a little bit more planning and time for them to be stimulating and making sure that they're like kind of hitting, what they want to learn about. My kids are very curious, and they're definitely they love learning, and so they require a lot of stimulation and ask a lot of questions and really like to dive deep, and versus having the littles at home where they need also specific attention, like the 2-year-old or the 4-year-old, and they're more kind of like in their crafty creative era, but that also requires a lot of hands-on. So it's kind of just like splitting me my time as like one with the 4 is kind of where I think for me is the problems arise sometimes.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we really like we could get in and talk about burnout, right? Is that's created from a thought and from a
Yes.
feeling, and then we have burnout, right? But then we can also look at your actual day. and just being like, yeah, I can see how this would be physically demanding. And also, we have to add in the fact that you are pregnant, right?
Yes.
Like, you're just
I just
tired.
have I just have
There's
lower
no getting
energy.
around that.
Yeah. And also, I do tend to get really sick with my pregnancies. So this was my first year of full homeschooling the kids, and I get HG at the beginning of my first trimester. So this time around, I had a couple of maybe like 12 weeks or so where I had to get IVs like kind of multiple
Mm,
times a week. I was on bed rest for a while. And so, yes, like I just physically couldn't do what I normally do. And so that was a little tough as well, because I think I also had like that thought of guilt of like, okay, I'm not getting all of the lesson works and all the things that we need normally do. But then I also understood it's the season. So it's kind of just like the in between of, yeah, I'm just like have lots of physical um, things and trying to hit each kid where they're in different areas
yeah.
is,
And so, as like, totally, you can't make yourself not pregnant, right? I mean, like, I guess technically you could, but like, we don't want to. Um, but like, that's just where you are, right? It's just what is. And
yes.
then I think there's a lot of mom guilt then in this, like trying to, you have four different kiddos and trying to meet like all of these needs. And it's really interesting because you use the word they require a lot of stimulation and that they get bored. So I'm wondering if you are actually burning yourself out because of this mom guilt of like where you are always entertaining them
Hmm.
instead of just including them. So
Yeah.
let me give you an example. So, especially younger kids, they want to be with you. It's real easy to have younger kids just want to be with you, right? It doesn't take a lot of luring to hang out with mom.
Hmm.
But sometimes we're like, it has to be this big lesson and it has to be this really big fun thing and all of these crafts I have to help you with. But instead, it's like, I want to make bread today. We're all making bread today, and I'm just including you with me. I want to go out in the yard, maybe not in Florida in the summertime, right? But like, but like whatever, it's like, I want to go out and do this thing. I want to do this. All it is a lot of times is just including them. So this requiring a lot of stimulation, that's the part that I want you to actually focus on is that they don't.
Okay.
I'm wondering if you're putting in like a lot of effort. I mean, which is good. Effort is beautiful, but we don't want to do it so much so that we are burned out because there are going to be times and seasons, right? Like, so maybe
Yeah.
even after you've had your baby, maybe it's a fussy baby and they're a really whiny toddler or something like that. And you have to slow down. And that's where you have to start getting a little bit creative of like, my kids are very curious. So is there something simpler I can do that
Mhm.
is fun and engaging? So is it I can go out back and I can hold my baby and we're just in a big park? Can I go on a drive with my kids that is still fun and we can do curious things? If you have an Alexa, a Google Home, or whatever, a smart
Mhm.
thing, is there something where they can ask questions to? Is a library, right? So it's like I can feel a lot of this curiosity and have it be a lot of fun without you having to put in the time and energy of creating these amazing activities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. And I feel like I've tried a little bit here and there of that. Like, we'll do the museum or like, even, like you said, we do the library or we do different things. Sometimes I think the boredom comes, I guess my thought is maybe they're not getting enough learn like fill of their learning capacity of what they want to learn. Like my son sometimes will often, and I learned this throughout this year, which is a great lesson to learn. For example, in math, he is really advanced in math, and I didn't realize until he kept saying, "Mommy, like this is too easy. I'm bored. It's too easy for me." And I'm like, "Okay, let's like test out. Let's go to the back and test and see where you're at." He like passed everything, and then we moved to the next like year, and then he passed everything, and I was like, "Okay, well that's probably why you were bored because this was too easy." So I think part of it is me thinking maybe they're not like they just want to learn more and maybe the opportunity is not there. But I guess I don't know if that's like a thought versus the reality, because I also know that they're learning things, every day, right? Like whatever it is. So
Yeah. Well,
like
I
instead
think
of
that's
hitting a lesson, they
oh,
can
go
learn.
ahead.
I was going to say, instead of hitting a lesson, maybe if, my son is interested in reptiles that day, then he can just do reptiles and he can explore that on his own instead of me focusing on like finishing a lesson. So it's, I think, mentality too.
Yeah, it's definitely two parts because I think that is interesting that like the math, he's bored because it was too easy. So
Yes.
like to me, you're already figuring that out. So is this like book was too is boring because it's so easy, right? There
Yes.
was no
Yeah.
challenge, there was no anything like that. But then the other piece is if they're just feeling bored. And I don't know what it is, but like, and I could do it too sometimes of just like, oh, I don't want you to feel bored. But like sometimes we're just bored, right?
Yeah.
And like you're probably a lot younger than I am, but like I didn't grow up with any smartphones, right? We didn't have a computer. There was no internet when I was growing up. We had like just the dumb channels that you could get from an antenna. So like you just got good at being bored because you were forced to.
Mhm.
And so sometimes because we have instant access to any movie, any show, we have instant access. I mean, we can DoorDash things if we don't feel like getting up and going into a store, even our groceries, right? So sometimes we're so used to instantaneous that we're losing the art of being bored. So that's where you can kind of look at both things and just saying like, is he bored because it's too easy? Okay, great. I figured that one out. Or is he like, I'm bored and I'm pestering people now and I find that
Yeah.
annoying?
Yeah. I give them plenty of board time because I'm of the belief
Okay.
that you need to figure things out and get creative. But that's where sometimes it comes no problem because then, for example, my 4-year-old, if she is going to be creative, then she gets creative with whatever is there. And, sometimes we end up with a gallery on the wall or which is totally fine. But that's the thing too, is that I feel like that's where I'm running with the hard balance because I feel like it's I love being home and staying home with them, but I feel like we do that a lot, and that's maybe why sometimes we go out, and if we're going out, then they get kind of like what I'm talking about, that stimulation or like that different thing that they're learning about. And so I think the balance is where I'm like trying to figure that out, especially with the new baby coming in. So
Yeah. And you talked about too about like lesson plans if he's really interested in reptiles
yeah,
that day, like
yes,
simplifying. And so like he's only 8 and that's how old my baby is, right? And so it's interesting how quick I am willing to I actually don't even really do lesson plans with like somebody that young because a
okay,
lot of times they're boring. So,
yes,
I was planning our homeschool year, and for science, twice a month, I thought I'm just going to let him pick a science book that I already own. I'm not even going to buy a new one because I already have a problem. So I was just going to let him pick a science book and just say like, what sounds interesting today? Let him pick the book, and then we were going to watch a YouTube video about it. And if it's something that's nature, like reptile, like let's go on a nature walk.
yeah,
One of my kids went through a natural disaster phase, which is weird, but like we
yeah,
would watch hurricanes or we would watch volcano eruptions. And he was like, this is so cool. Right. And so to me, like it doesn't need to be a lesson plan at this age because they are just getting so much. And so just by having books out and available and just like, hey, for science, pick one. And then I utilize YouTube a lot. Just it's fun, it's easy
hmm
but also fun and can like spark a lot of curiosity. And then if you're feeling up for it that day, like, yeah, let's do this little activity. But I wonder if that's part of that burnout is like you feeling like you have to plan so many things and there
yeah.
you're just at this really beautiful age of young where you don't need to.
I think that's where it is. I think I'm starting to realize, even with this conversation, and several other conversations with other moms too that I've started to meet in the homeschooling community here, but that I think my mentality is so stuck on finishing X amount of lessons
Mm,
or finishing the booklet, like our booklet of language arts and making sure we finish it versus, like you said, if my son just simply wants to watercolor or, my kids love art too. So like if they just want to watercolor, like, just do that. And that can be the lesson for the day or, um, X, Y, and Z. And so I think I think that's where it might be easier as the new baby comes to making sure that and it also is probably going to help them because I think one of my struggles of the burnout too has been like trying to pull them to finish a lesson. Like, let's finish this lesson. Let's finish this book. Like, and they're like, no, I don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, well, then that's the part I think for me that is the most frustrating part of homeschooling because I love all the other aspects. It's more of like getting them to do something that they don't want to do. I'm like, I feel like I don't want to do that. I want you
yeah.
to. love it. And obviously there's going to be days where they don't want to do certain things like, writing or reading or whatever. But I think that's part of too where I get burnt out of just like, I don't want to nag ever. And I want it to be fun and like
Yes.
engaging, and I want them to love what they're learning. That's why I want to do this and I continue to homeschool. But there's definitely parts where I'm like working through a workbook and it's like, all right, it's time for the lesson. It's time for the lesson. And where it's like 40 minutes pass. And now the baby is like, she was entertained for the 30 minutes, the 2-year-old with the Play-Doh, but
Yeah.
now no longer. And so now I don't have the 40 minutes to like, teach the whatever, reading lesson is that day. But
Yeah. And I don't have the numbers on like right in front of me, but like your school can be so much shorter with the ages.
yes,
So even
no,
my 8-year-old right now, when we do one-on-one together, like 15, 20 minutes tops.
yeah, yeah. And so my oldest usually will do no more than an hour. And that's including like math, language arts, poetry, like all the like hard ones that I would do. But I like to like that's where I think too the planning for me is hard of like, okay, where do I fit all of these things into our day? Um, versus like them learning things in an unconventional way, which I love and I let them do. It's fitting in all the other things because I only have like 30 minutes here while the 2-year-old is entertained, or 30 minutes here while, the older one is eating, or, versus, so it's kind of hard to do that.
Yes, but there's some like just natural ways you can teach without it being a lesson, especially at this age, of just playing music. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can never remember his name. It's a French composer. I always say it wrong, so I'm not even going to try. But he did a Carnival of the Animals, right? And so just even like playing that on, like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us have smartphones and the speaker, right? So it doesn't even
Yeah.
have to be like an Alexa or a Google Home, but just playing stuff like that and then like dancing around, like, oh, this is the swan. How would a
Mm-hmm.
swan move, right? And so it doesn't even have to be a lesson. It can just be music you have in the background, pictures that you have up around your house. If you have a screen that can display different pictures where it's just going through, books that are just out, right, of fun, engaging things. And so that then they are just learning and grasping these things without having you feel burned out with a lesson. And
Okay.
I will tell you, when I had my sixth baby, my oldest was 9. Like my kids came so fast. And
Mm-hmm.
I had him at the end of March, and we did 0 homeschool until September. And those 5 kids that are above him are all my adult children who are all really capable, amazing humans. And we took off a big chunk of time other than natural learning. And we actually did do Magic School Bus. I don't even know if they make shows of those anymore. Magic School Bus and Liberty Kids, and
Okay.
then the library and the pool,
Yeah.
like and a lot of walks, right? And
Yeah.
like just being together, making meals together, just having fun. And all 5 of those kids are doing amazing things. And when they look back at that time, it's not like, oh, remember when mom just was a deadbeat and just sat with the baby? To them, it was like, remember how fun that was? We would just play, and then mom would let us watch a show every now and then. And we got to go to the library and we got to do all these things. And they also created a lot of independence of like, what do we want to do? What do we want to create? And so just even thinking about this, baby's coming in October.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if we just do the lightest awesome schedule until January?
Mm-hmm.
Just pull back because a lot of homeschoolers don't homeschool in December anyway.
Yeah, that's
Even a
true.
lot of public schoolers, there's not really real school happening in
Yeah.
December and November, right? But just like Tuttle's Twins has cartoon episodes now that I
Yeah,
think
which
are,
we did buy a whole thing from them, so we have some episodes that we haven't watched.
yeah,
That would be good. And I also looked into co-oping, maybe like joining a community, because the other thing, the factor that I didn't write in my question, but I think it would go with the boredom too, which they have each other, which is
right.
good social aspect, right? But they also, my kids are very social and love friends, and I feel like they always want that like they want that set up play date, or they want to go and do something with a group, or they want to go and hang out with friends. So that's the part too where the coordination on my end, right, to make that happen and have him have those experiences. So I looked into doing that for them, like maybe once a week type of thing, where they could go with this group of kids and explore, and we can do whatever, STEM related things, or art or Spanish, or whatever we want to do. to give them that opportunity. But obviously with the baby, it's it's like, okay, I just need to remember to slow down too.
Yes, but like sometimes groups like that already exist. Like I'm
Yes.
all for if it doesn't exist, like create
Yeah.
it. But like with your bandwidth a little lower, even just finding homeschool Facebook groups in Florida,
No,
right?
I did find a couple. So I think I was planning on potentially doing that this fall as I was planning out what to do so that they would be able to have that and I can show up, be with the baby, be breastfeeding, and they can have their like, time to create and learn. So that's something that I thought about as well. That would help.
Yes. So as you were planning some of this, so I think you have a lot of good ideas of like how to maybe pull back a little bit or just different ways to maybe structure it. Like you don't need to sit and do a full
Yeah.
lesson. It could just be a game. Like we could play.
Mhm.
If your son likes math, then that's not an issue. But like maybe for language arts, we're just gonna do Mad Libs. We're gonna watch. We would watch the Schoolhouse Rock videos, like the old ones from the 70s. I think that's what it's called like what's a noun, what's a verb, like, and they're all the songs and they're silly, right?
Mhm.
But like maybe we're going to utilize some stuff like that because you can sit and nurse a baby and like do YouTube or something like that on the
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah.
Um, but what was my last thought with that? This is why I was writing to while we talk is because I get my mind goes blank so quickly. This is what I wanted to say. Is there is a concept I learned from Brooke Snow called floors and ceilings. And
Mhm.
this is what I love is because your dream homeschool plan is a ceiling. Like we're going to sit down and we're going to do a read aloud, or maybe we're reading scriptures and we're going to do this beautiful poetry and all this amazing stuff. And then we're going to do lessons with each of the children and it's going to be amazing. That is like this amazing ideal day that rarely happens.
Yeah.
But what we'll do is we'll say like this is what homeschool should look like, and then we beat ourselves up that doesn't always look like that. So
Mhm.
that's why we want a bare minimum floor, especially with a new baby coming. And this is whether you have a new baby or there's any change, because like whatever the change is, I like to remind you it's like a new baby because change just throws a curve in the system.
Yeah.
So a bare minimum floor could be I read one sentence of a book, right? It could be like I hug all my kids that day and say like, here's a
Oh,
fun
that would make
fact.
me feel so good. That would make me feel so good.
Yes, and it could even be like I set out a book for the week.
Yeah.
I like to go get old like shelves and flip them upside down on something and make little book stands, and then like randomly I'll switch them out.
Mhm.
And so it's like I will switch out books once a week, once a month, whatever feels like a really solid floor for you. And then now you have like this good gauge of like, this is my ideal dream day. The baby slept the whole night. 2-year-old didn't destroy anything. This would be dreamland. And then I also have like, I'm barely functioning. Like I put out books and markers, children, like go wild on all of these things. And then when you have that floor, it gives you support that's like, at least we did this. And then anything extra is a beautiful bonus. Like I also did read aloud today and that was dreamy. And then the next day it's like I sat and did a lesson with somebody. That was dreamy, right? And so that you have this really solid foundation so that you're not beating yourself up of I should be doing more. My kids are going to be behind. I'm not doing enough. This is bad for my kids. Whatever story you're going to add in there. So really being clear with the floor. So like my floor for scriptures is to say go Jesus,
Yeah.
because we can always do that. I know it's weird, but like we put our hands in and we go,
I love that.
go Jesus. And like we usually can do a prayer with that. But if it's like scriptures are not happening, I love to do like, at least we can do go Jesus. And then my like one step above that is I found this cute podcast that they do scripture stories. And so if we're heading to an orthodontist appointment was early that morning, I'm like, hey, I'm just going to turn on this podcast. And then in my dreamland, everybody's there. All my teens and adults like that are here visiting or whatnot. We're doing scriptures together, and dad is there. And he's like, in Hebrew, this means this, and in Greek, this means this. And do you know what a chiasma is? Let me tell you, right? And so, like, that
Yeah.
is my dream, but it doesn't always happen. Like, my husband was on a call this morning. And so we did something that was in the middle where I'm like, hey, let me just kind of read the idea of this chapter in the scriptures. We said, go, Jesus, and we did our prayer, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think you hit on like probably one of the things like root cause for me is probably just unrealistic expectations. And I think what switch it, then it like kind of opens up all the things, right? The wonderful things that happen that are not necessarily like what you said, picture perfect.
Yeah.
Especially with a lot of kids. Like I totally get that. Like every day is, and they're even learning so much like through it. And we did move, like I would say we're still kind of newbies here in South Florida. Like we moved almost a year and a half ago. So for them, the transition was very hard. Um, and so they're basically just getting acclimated back into it. And so I've seen all the positive benefits of them being home so much with me and being able to like get back into like, you know, the love of the things that they love and the things that they want to explore. So that is always why I say yes, like I'm going to continue doing this, even though there are definitely days where I'm like, why am I doing this? I want to quit.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It'd be a lot easier for them just to go into public school and I can just clean the house. But that's not what I want.
I was gonna say no, because then you'd have a toddler with no big kids to entertain.
Exactly, that's true too. So,
Yeah. So I love, there's a Shakespeare quote that said, the root of all heartache, expectations are the root of all heartache. Right. And so lowering, getting rid of, and sometimes people are like, well, they think my life is more perfect than what it actually looks like, right? Because you're not in my home. And I don't want to wrap my kids out all the time. Like, this one's kind of a pig, or this one did whatever, right? And so, but it's been funny because like I try to be as authentic as I can, but I don't want to throw my kids under the bus. But like my house is not perfectly spotless. I still have 4 kids living at home. And yes, a lot of them are older, but like my 8-year-old has been way into bald eagles and has a weird collection because all the big kids like to buy him some, and he sets them up in different things. Right. And so it's like, oh, Meg's house must be so clean because she doesn't have a baby. And it's like, well, I still have kids who create stuff. And now I have a kid in tackle football. So now we have football gear everywhere. And then I have a kid who works full time. And so she's like, sorry, I left a huge mess in the kitchen, but I got to go to work. Right. So it's like realizing that nobody's home,
mhm.
like the Pinterest homeschool.
Yeah, yeah,
Everybody's homeschool's messy. Everybody's homeschool has challenges. And I love how you put that into like unrealistic expectations of like I just need to have a lower floor.
yeah, totally. No, and I think that that would help like ease a lot of the thoughts that come from like of because also it is a mental load too, right? It's
Yeah.
like very like physical for me right now, but also mental of like with the unrealistic expectations of just focusing on the things that I love that they are learning or that they're doing and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I think that kind of changes perspective. So that's really good. Needed to hear that.
Yeah. And you can also like I heard this years ago, but the baby is the lesson, right? But I
Yes.
think so
Yeah.
many things with like even a baby science, right? Like isn't it amazing what the human body can do?
Which
Like
definitely is happening. Lots of
yeah.
conversations about that. So we're definitely learning a lot about babies and they love it. They're very curious. They ask the most awesome questions. I actually love that my kids, I know some people sometimes get uncomfortable when people
Yeah.
like ask a lot of questions, but I truly am like, ask me anything, like, you know, let's learn. And they really truly do sometimes. I'm like, oh, that's actually a very good question. Let me get back to you on that one. But yeah, no, they're great in that way.
Yeah. I let my kids will watch the birth of my final baby and because I did home birth, right? And I was like,
Oh,
that is science for several months and some trauma. Right. But like your life right now, there's so much natural stuff with homeschool and focusing. I would like for you, I would really focus on the going slower and
okay.
then that connection piece, but also habits. So
Mhm.
before baby comes, of like, can they clean their room?
Yeah, we've actually, my husband and I really, we just had our 10-year anniversary
Ooh,
actually week.
congrats.
So thank you. And we were talking about that because we were like, we want to have instill like a family, you know, goal or motto or something that, and also just have routines for them that we love and that they'll love and that they'll feel like they're being part of the team because that's also part of the burnout, right? Is like me thinking again, mentality shifting of I'm the one in charge of everything and the kids are
Yes.
and that's been hard for me too because again with so many kids you just have to learn how to manage that and so for me I'm like I really just feel like we need a change and shift to something where the kids feel like a team and they feel like they're contributing. And that part of itself is a lesson too, because they're becoming really good, independent kids. So making sure they have a routine, that they make their bed, or like I've been sitting and spending a little bit more time doing laundry with them of like, let's put it away. Like, let's like teach you how to load, teach you how, and so those are like awesome lessons too, that I know. And some of my kids like love doing different things and others love doing others, like specifically when it comes to house stuff. And so we've been kind of like going with that. And also we've been trying to like have, I got them gratitude journals. So I'm like, okay, while we're making breakfast, because I know everyone's hungry, you guys can just kind of do something while we wait. And, just instilling more of a routine, because I felt like for sure we had a small routine, but then it changes so drastically when you just add all the kids, to the family. And then it could become chaos if there's not like something set in stone. So that's something that I really wanted to focus to, like this fall, particularly with them, is having them own their own like little environments
Yeah.
and in our home, and being like, hey, we want to have this home like a place where we can feel the spirit and we can be happy and we can, learn. And that takes, and they always ask, well, for example, so they're learning so much about like teamwork, right? Because they're like, I'm like, hey, I need help with this, and who can help me pick up? And the olders are like, well, that we didn't make that mess, but I'm like,
Yeah.
well, but sometimes I clean messes that are not mine, and I'm helping, right? We're helping each other, so that's going to be a big focus for us too here.
Yes, that was one of the things I thought of when I was reading your question too, is
Yeah.
teaching them to help more, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, and where you have 4 kids, a lot of times I do a buddy system.
Okay.
So 8-year-old has the hardest one, or like whichever personalities work the best. But
Mm-hmm.
like the 2 oldest ones, maybe they can do a lot of the laundry. Maybe they can fold their own clothes now.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, hey, you're also going to help your buddy fold their clothes. So when the baby comes, like a lot of those little things can be going. And so maybe it's even like, let's think of 6 simple lunches that you guys can make, 3 simple lunches, right? Like, is it sandwiches, quesadillas? I've been buying, I don't know if you have Costco by you, but they have like these
Yeah, we
meat
do.
packs that are like a charcuterie board style meat. And then I grab like little cheese pack and like crackers and then grapes. You know what I mean? It's like peel a bunch of carrots and like here are a bunch of lunches. So it's so that you feel ready with a lot of the routine, because I think a lot of burnout for homeschool moms is because they're doing all the cooking, all the cleaning,
Yeah.
all the laundry, all the
And the
lesson
teaching.
planning,
Yeah.
and the teaching,
Yeah.
right? And so, like, if I were you, and then this is what I did with my own kids too, like the lessons will come and you can keep reading, especially read to them at night and
Yeah.
playing beautiful
We do.
music.
They love their nightly books for
But
sure.
like before baby comes, of really establishing like this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so like my 8-year-old can do his laundry from start to finish now because we were just working on it. And obviously he doesn't have a younger sibling, but I had an older sibling that was training him. That was
And I've
like, here's how you
actually,
do that.
that's actually a really interesting point that you bring up, because I have noticed, I feel like it all goes back to mentality, honestly, it really does.
It
Because
always does.
my kids, I've noticed that on Saturdays are a big chore day, like is where we
Yeah.
kind of reset our house. And I noticed that one of my kids, I don't want to throw the kid under the bus, but
Yeah, you're fine.
they're little, they're fine. But they don't love doing some of their chores on Saturday. And I noticed that some of the other kids were like, you know what, I'll help you and we'll do this. But then what ended up happening is that they got tired because they were helping and they were finishing, and then they didn't finish their own chore. And so then I was like, I love the teamwork, but also you have your own like set of chores. So I was kind of stopping that, like, make sure you finish your thing too before you help. But then I'm like, oh, I don't know. But then they're helping each other. So that was something that for me, I was like, I'm not sure if I was like stopping something really good that was happening because they were synergizing versus, I don't know, being like, just
Yeah.
finish the to-do list, right? And even if you're being creative and helping each other work through.
Yeah. And that's something you'll just have to play around with because
They're
mind you,
little
like,
too, so
yeah.
they do need breaks too. So I know that as well. Again, my oldest is 8, so they're
Yeah. No, you're doing great. Jessica, thank you so much for coming on. I think this was a really great question because a lot of moms feel this burnout, and whether or not, like I said, it's a baby or just some type of change or just like, ooh, this is so different. My kids were all in school and now they're all home, right? Just whatever that change is. So thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast today. If you have a question, make sure you go to my Instagram, Coach Meg Thomas, and in my bio, you can sign up there with a question, just a private question, or you can come get on the podcast. Or it's in my email weekly newsletter. So, anyways, Jessica, thank you so much. And friends, have an amazing week.